What's up, everybody? We're back with Most Dope, and today we have a very special guest. We're at the Reeperbahn Festival, and we're joined by the one and only Lord Conan.
Yeah, I'm black like the key on the piano, white like the keys on the piano, low ammo, black like the key on the piano.
This is not your first time in Germany. I've heard you say that this is one of your favorite travel destinations, right? Is that still the case?
Yeah, yo, I've been here so much, and I've always felt a lot of love here. Yeah, I love it here. I came here first on a German exchange trip with a student, Johnny. Shout out to Johnny Costa if you're watching. But yeah, since then my German hasn't got better, but I've felt more love since then.
The love is all we're known for, actually, no? Right?
Exactly. I can't explain it. I just think people are friendly. The food is nice. The architecture is beautiful. The beer is nice. I don't drink really that much anymore, but still, one beer is okay.
All right, perhaps you'll get a chance to do that after your show, perhaps, because you have a show tonight, and obviously there's another reason why we're sitting down right now, and that's a new album, Hugo.
Yes.
It's going to come out in October. And about this album, you once said that there's a sweet spot when you're naive enough to still be free speaking, but considered enough to be refining your shit. Would you say that with this album you're currently at that place, and if so, what does that look like exactly?
I think at every point when you're creating new art, no matter what kind of artist you are, I think you always think that you're at that place, right? Because that's how you start to create it. But I would hope so. I think what it really looks like is, who's maybe Tyler the Creator is there right now for definite. Kendrick Lamar, To Pimp a Butterfly. Like, I would like to think that I'm there now because the older you get, the more you know. And when you begin to know everything about something, it loses its charm. So if you study photography and you understand exactly how the light works and how it's bouncing off my face and whatever, that's cool because you're understanding it, and part of that can help the craft. But when it goes too far, you lose any spontaneity. And that's what I think I still have.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think the first single of that album really did surprise me, and I think also a lot of other fans, Hate, because it marked kind of a shift in tone for some aspects, much more aggressive.
The same look up in the rise, if they're borrowed with time, it's 9 lives on the A to the finishing line, it's right there on the horizon, couldn't finish the rhyme, I hate time.
Could you tell us about, like the place you were, mentally, and where you were generally at when you were working on this song, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I was just in a hateful place. I was angry for sure and disenfranchised, and I felt kind of trapped. I guess like I kind of had built up this I don't know, this this vision of this image of myself for better and for worse. I was trying to always put my best foot forward and come across nice and polite, etc., etc. But I don't know. I got to this point where I was like, okay, I need to start showing the reality, the 360 of who I am. And so, yeah, that was like the first step into that.
And I think one of the realities, obviously, has to do with your career and your success and where you currently are. I mean, your first albums were pretty big successes, from media. Critics loved it, the fans loved it. But I feel like on Hate, there's a sense that you're still struggling with that success to a certain extent. Is that true?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily struggling with success, but I'm just, struggling still. I think that there's definitely a misconception that as a person who finds any sort of success in something, that some of their work becomes profitable and they're able to tour the world on whatever, that all of their, and they make money, that all of their, the stresses before that disappear, and really sometimes they get compounded. And so I guess this album is a reflection of some of the stuff maybe that I've been bottling in over the rise of my music and, my shows, that I've always kind of gone, hey, yo, everything's fine. And that I kind of alluded to that on my last album with the title, because the title is about a guy who you see from far away in the ocean and you can't tell if he's going like, yo, everything's okay, when really he's going, help, help. And I think maybe that album kind of in part was, I don't know, in my intention with my last album was exactly that, was to kind of go, everything looks like it's okay on the surface, but it's difficult. And for this one, I think I had to be more explicit because people didn't really see through that,
Right, yeah, I see that. That makes sense. Also, interestingly enough, I think on this last album, you started a process that really influenced this album. And you started with that on looking back, trying to reconnect with your roots, with your Guyanese roots and so on. And obviously now on this album, we get to hear you going through this process and reflecting on all of these topics. Can you walk us through that? You've obviously went to Guyana. What were some of the things you did there, and how was your experience?
In Guyana, I just tried to get enveloped in the culture. I tried to spend as much time as I could with family, people who are local to there, you know, like play football, like nothing out of the ordinary, you know, try to listen to the music out there, eat the food, hug the people, you know, have conversations, you know, I really tried to listen.
Yeah.
But in general, I guess that connection goes deeper. It's just trying to find a balance and an understanding and a love for forgiveness for my father, you know, that's like really where I've been at. And that's something that I guess in hip hop in particular is relatively like untouched, you know, and this whole idea, much like my life of, you know, deadbeat father, support your mum, love your mum, you know, kind of disrespect and don't pay any attention to the elders, you know, the male elders in your life. And I think that is cool to an extent to help you move forwards, but can be quite toxic because, you know, the only way to break this cycle and, you know, if you're fearful of the hate from past, you know, male ancestors traveling down through you to your son or to your daughter, is to take that love from, you know, whoever's younger in the youngest generation and pass it back upwards, you know, to my father, to my father's father. So, yeah, that's kind of the journey I've been on. And I guess that's what I'm trying to offer into this thing called hip hop that I love, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think those themes of fatherhood obviously play a major role on your album. I'd like to speak about that a little bit later. But obviously you've also dropped a single called Georgetown that was set, you know, the video was set in Guyana. And that song was produced by Madlib.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And it wasn't even your first time collaborating with him.
No.
What does it feel like, you know, to be working repeatedly together with someone that you called like a dream collab just a few years ago?
Yeah, it's a dream come true for me. You know, I grew up listening to Jay Dilla, Madlib, DJ Premier, Pete Rock, and I don't know, especially, you know, there's something very special about Jay Dilla and Madlib, and I don't know, it feels like Madlib is probably one of the last continuous creators that is still pushing the envelope and challenging himself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that he's ever been satisfied with where he's at.
Yeah.
And that's the mark of a true genius and a true artist. And, yo, to be able to share ideas with him and, you know, to offer, to be a link in the chain of that, you know, to know how many people he has touched musically, creatively, you know, spiritually. And, yeah, to be a part of that journey with him is, man, yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream for me.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. And obviously, I feel like you're an artist that is also very open to like other sources of inspiration all the time. I mean, not waving but drowning. You know, you've had Ottolenghi and Carluccio as kind of like very unusual but prominent sources of inspiration.
Yeah.
And now on this song, you're citing or have John Agard citing his poem Half Caste. So where do you usually like draw your inspiration from? Because it doesn't seem like you go to the same sources that perhaps other rappers do.
Like anybody who's, you know, making art, I just try to keep my eyes open because you never know where it's going to be. And try and keep my mind open to allow it to affect me, you know. I'm a bit of a soft guy and I see beauty in a lot. And my son's helped me with that because he sees the world through such big eyes. So it's reminded me to look at things that before I would have been like, yeah, cool, I've seen that before. And actually stay there for a minute and look at it like he would do in a gallery and try and see the picture behind the mundane, you know.
Right.
But yeah, inspiration is everywhere, man. You just got to open your eyes.
So about the poem Half Caste itself, John Agard, I don't think many people in Germany will perhaps know it. And in England, some people read it in school already. When or where did you first read it, actually?
Yo, I only came across the poem over lockdown. And it was very moving for me because so John Agard, he's mixed race like myself. So his mum is Portuguese, I think, and his father is Guyanese, I think. Don't quote me. And yeah, to see someone, you know, he's in his 70s now, and for him to be speaking about the same lived experience as me, you know, to be sitting in between these two absolutes, you know, I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm just somewhere in the middle. And society is always reminding you of this. It's very nice to, instead of always feeling like two halves, the poem was one of the first things that made me feel like one whole. You get me? So, yeah, it was moving. The poem, if you haven't heard it, is just about all these things that seemingly are disconnected. And if you know, say if you're on the piano and you hit the black key and the white key, it makes a symphony. They're not separate notes; they become one, which is what I am. You know, a symphony.
Yeah, exactly. And we can obviously hear all of that symphony on Hugo then. You once, spoke to The Guardian about this album as well, and you said that when it comes to, very personal subjects, people nowadays are sometimes afraid of being crucified, and you are trying to unlearn that, be more of yourself, and to get your emotions, I guess, across more explicitly to some extent. Did you feel like through this process, it helped you mostly, like, show that side of you to others, or did you also learn something from that yourself?
I guess I've always tried to be myself anyways, and I'm trying to push myself every day to do that because that's the only thing I can definitely do. And I think if you do that truthfully and 100%, you cannot be cut down for it because that's who you are, you know what I mean? It's when you start to try and lean into other things, that's when you get unstuck. 'Cause you're trying to be someone else, and then people go, no, that's not true. Then you're fucked, So trying to be myself wholeheartedly.
Right, yeah.
It's hard, though. It's a hard task.
I can tell, and I think it also shines through on this album because at times, when I was listening through the whole thing, you talk about your own process of crafting your music as well. Yeah. And it sometimes feels like you also put a lot of pressure on yourself when writing.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, and I'm sick of that shit, man. This is my last album of doing that. And this to me, this is like my, like the Magnus Opus. This is like over 3 years or more, like over 900 and something days. I've been blazing through these tunes, working, trying to find a way of getting all these thoughts out of my head, made like 100 tunes and put a lot of pressure on how it was worded. And from now on, it's like, no, fuck that. From now, it's like free thought, whatever's there in the moment, keep it, don't overthink it.
Okay, interesting. So that's then the direction you're planning on taking.
For the next, they all have to be different. My last album, Not Woven But Drowning, was kind of like that to a lesser extent. This one was much more lyrical, Kendrick Lamar, inspired. And then the next one is Red Hot Chili Peppers, Everything has to be different. You have to move.
Yeah, I mean, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you're educating yourself on that currently.
So, that I wish you saw.
As you said, man, inspiration is everywhere.
Yo, it's everywhere. Open your eyes.
Just one more question. So on this album, you talk about fatherhood a lot, growing up, transitioning from youth to adulthood. And you're a father yourself now. Yep. You've got a son. How did that affect you in your process as well?
I don't know. A lot of people were asking me if I would become more censored, you know what I mean? Because there's a kid listening that's attached to me. And one day he's going to have to live by what I say, I guess, in some ways. Or not live by it, but he'll be attached to it.
Yeah.
And I think it actually made the opposite happen. That I became more explicit and honest, even further, because it was like, I have to tell the truth. There's no chance to get a repeat, because it's more like I want my son to hear it and know that all the things that he's feeling, whether it's rage, alienated, cold, hurt, grief, whatever it is, that it's okay and it's human, and I've felt it before. And if I felt it, then there's a way of moving through it. So yeah, I think I've actually become more explicit since having a kid, which is weird but cool.
Yeah. And we obviously will get a chance to hear if you've achieved that, and how it translates onto this new album. Yeah. Thank you very much for sitting down with us. Are there any last words you want to share with your fans, your community, or anything?
Drink more water, man. Don't drink too many beers, but have one. Enjoy your life. Peace.
Sounds good. And we out. See you next time. Bye bye.